This is Fred Beck from Fred Talks Fighting. Today I'm very lucky to join by Jamie Bourne from Punch Perfect Boxing. So Jamie, how's your day been?
Yeah, well, good, thanks, mate. Obviously, got up early this morning to watch Crawford versus Porter, but just want to say thanks for having me on, mate. Really enjoying the stuff you're doing some good work to keep it up.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's always weird when people kind of say that in person, and let alone even watch the videos. So kind of before we touch on Terence Crawford versus Sean Porter, tell me a bit about how you got started with your channel and what's going on with it.
Yeah, so I pretty much I've been a boxing fan since I was about 6 or 7. I've been following it for years, but around sort of 14, I started getting into like the blogging side of it, doing a bit of writing for some websites, and used to send in some sort of snippets into magazines, and occasionally get like the letter of the week type thing published in some boxing magazines, and kind of always done the written side of it. And then last year with the pandemic, just had so much free time and was looking for something to do. And I work in marketing and do a bit of web development on the side. So thought I'll start a blog, start up my own boxing website, gave that a go for a couple of months, and then was like, well, I feel like people listen to things more than read. So I started the podcast, which we uploaded to YouTube. That is just a little bit, it kind of, it was more so for the enjoyment of talking boxing for an hour and then just uploading it to YouTube for people to listen to and try and get people involved. But this year, kind of from January, February time after the Christmas break, decided that I was really going to kind of go big on it this year and start interviewing people and getting other channels involved with my channel and doing videos every single day or at least 6 times a week or whatever. So yeah, this year has been the main year for it, really.
Yeah, it makes sense really because most people started their kind of YouTube channels. I did as well, kind of towards the end or during the pandemic. And did you box as an amateur at all?
No, so I boxed for a year. My dad was a really good amateur boxer, so always kind of wanted to give it a go. But for me, really growing up, I played football pretty much every day of the week. So even when I was boxing, it got to a point where I had to choose one or the other, and football had a bit more promise in football, let's say that. So I stuck with that for the sort of foreseeable.
And do you still play football now?
Yeah, still something I play, not to the standard that I once did, but still play pretty much most weekends and stuff and most nights of the week.
What's that Sunday league?
Yeah, so Sunday league, I play on Saturdays as well. And then in the week, obviously train Saturdays and play in sort of six-a-side leagues as well and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my main, away from the videos and working and family and stuff. Probably football's a sort of other love.
Oh, okay, that's quite nice then. And with your videos, what do you prefer doing? Kind of talking to the camera and like explaining and predicting all the fights, or do you prefer kind of doing the interviews?
So yeah, there's no real preference for me really. I do love kind of just sitting down and even as a fan talking about a fight to the camera, even before I'm thinking of uploading it, kind of builds the excitement for me for a fight. If the fight's coming on a Saturday, I'll go on a Monday and start recording a video. It builds my excitement, so I really enjoy that aspect. But the thing I probably enjoy most is the between round series on my channel, where I get fellow YouTubers on like a G-Man, and get them on and discuss some fights and kind of go back and forth and have those conversations, because not everyone's a big boxing fan out there, so you don't have those sort of in-depth boxing conversations often. Luckily for you, you do, because you do a lot of interviews and stuff. But to have those conversations is quite rewarding because you don't usually get them just in everyday life. So it's nice.
Yeah, that's very true. Like a couple of my mates are boxing fans. One's I guess with a bit of a hardcore boxing fan like I am, but the rest just don't really watch it. So it's quite cool coming into boxing and someone who kind of knows what they're talking about. And when you do your interviews, do you do a lot of preparation? Do you like a whole page of notes, or do you kind of do bullet points of what you want to talk about?
Yeah, I kind of have prompts really, just like bullet points of things that I want to discuss. It depends on who it is really. If sometimes you get an opportunity to interview someone that perhaps you don't know the most about them, but you recognize it's a good opportunity and you want to speak to them. But I try to interview people that I know a lot about and can kind of ask the questions. And I think that really helps with a lot of the interviews I've done. I've spoken to a lot of amateur boxers. Actually, earlier this year, spoke to Kershawn Davis, who's just turned pro with Top Rank, won silver at the Olympics. And when I spoke to him, he said to me off air that he was really impressed with some of the stuff I was asking because he hadn't kind of been asked those questions before. So I like speaking to people where I don't really need my notes. I just know off my head what I'm going to ask them and what I want to say.
Wow, I didn't know you. I need to watch the interview. I watched it after this. I didn't know you interviewed Keyshawn Davis because he's got his fight, he fought on the Cole Frampton versus Jamel Herring undercard, and he was fighting an opponent which is he was 10-1, but the guy's
Yeah.
loss was because of disqualification. So yeah, he's going to do big things, Keyshawn. How'd you go around getting an interview with him?
So pretty much I've been sort of bigging him up for quite a few years now. I think I first saw him in 2017, but in 2019 he really came into his own. And the main thing was he'd be a gold medalist in everything if he wasn't in the same weight class as Andy Cruz, who's just the best amateur boxer on the planet. So he kind of caught my eye through that. And again, I just like sort of speaking to people that are interesting and people that I have an interest in. And I think it's one of those ones where people leave their email address in their Instagram and you just kind of spam it and hopefully get something back. But luckily for him, he's managed. So you tend to get a bit of a better response from fighters that are actually managed by someone rather than the fighters themselves.
Okay, that makes sense then. It's always cool interviewing a fighter before they made their pro debut, or even if they're still as an amateur, because then you go, oh yeah, when they're world champion, like, oh yeah, I interviewed him when he didn't have much of a big name, and then obviously at the end of his career, he'll have a massive name. And what other people? I should have looked at your channel and the interviews, and then I only looked at your normal videos. Who else have you interviewed then?
So to be honest, I started last year. I interviewed a few professionals. So I did speak to the likes of John Ryder, Chris Smith, people like that. But again, that was when I was just doing audio really. So they were audio interviews. They weren't the best. I didn't even properly listen to them back because I didn't really enjoy them as much. And again, I think it was probably because I was making up questions to ask them. I wasn't just going off the dome and asking things I wanted to know. So more recently, I focused on the amateur boxing and people that I really want to speak to and get to know them before they do turn pro, because when these fighters do turn pro in a few years' time, I want to kind of have that relationship with them already to be able to go to them for an interview or whatever, or when they were not a nobody, but when they were lesser known, I've had those conversations with them. So recently it was the World Amateur Championships. So I spoke to the gold medalist from America, Jamal Harvey, who's only 18 years old, and sort of getting a feel for him. Had a really good conversation. And again, I feel like he is the Shakur of the next couple of years. He is the Jaron Ennis of the next few years. So having those conversations nice and early is good. And then the other one I spoke to was Reece Lynch, who's the first Scottish World Championship medalist. So speaking to a history maker, again, those type of things interest me. So I'm trying to sort of speak to people that I really can just sit and have a chat with.
And they'll remember you as well, because they'll always remember that you gave them that interview when they didn't have that much of a big name, even though it's not like they do have a big name. But when all the other bigger channels are interviewing them and you're interviewing them, they'll definitely remember that. And do you kind of see yourself having a podcast, an in-person podcast one day then?
I'd love to. The kind of dream really is to have like my own sort of setup. I think I said to you before, like I still live at home at the minute. I'm in my early 20s, but the plan is in the next sort of year or two that I'll kind of have my own space to, a bit like Ade. I look up to Ade quite a lot. Someone that I speak to regularly and seeing his journey. He's kind of looked to build his own studio. He's now in there and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I want to do as well. And I'm not going to get into too much what I do in my day job, but it would work alongside that as well. So I do want to kind of have this sort of studio where if I speak to a G-man again or whoever, we can do videos in person or do interviews in person and get these people face to face. Because I feel like you have a different type of conversation when you're face to face with someone.
Yeah, for example, like say I interrupt you when you're talking, the Zoom will kind of cut out a tiny bit, because you won't be able to hear. But in person, you can do it, kind of get away with it. Where on Zoom, you can't do it at all because everyone will catch you. But whereas if you watched Rob Tebbett's kind of podcast on Boxing Social, because that kind of layout, the room they got there, is quite well done.
Yeah, exactly. That's the type of thing really that I love, that sort of thing. Even the Undefeated podcast, if you watch that one as well, like just the professional lookout and the kind of feel of it, I just love that sort of thing. And yeah, I want to aim towards that.
You need to get some punch perfect Christians and mics in the background like they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who knows? In a few years, me and you might have our own studio, and we'll be doing our own show in there.
Yeah, I'll come on your podcast on it. Maybe I won't be a big enough name, maybe, but I'll come on your. Maybe when I've got a bigger name, I'll come on your podcast then when it's got going. No. So let's just touch on the fight that happened last night that you woke up for. Terence Crawford, Sean Porter. What are your kind of overall thoughts on the fight?
Just that Terence Crawford is a really special fighter, and yeah, really good performance from him. And like I kind of said that in my own video, that the way he there's something different about the likes of him, Canelo, Usyk, etc. And if I use those three as an example, we saw Usyk in the Joshua fight, where Joshua had a good sort of middle stage, rounds 5 and 6. He actually had 2 good rounds, and Usyk just went to another level. Canelo against Plant, and even the Kovalev fight, the Saunders fight, he gets to a point late in the fight where he just finds another level and he turns it on. And again, last night, that was a bit like Crawford. His corner were trying to get a bit more urgency out of him. He started to take control of the fight. And just again, when he wanted to kind of turn it on and prove that he was too good for a really good fighter in Sean Porter, he flipped that switch and he got him out of there. And yeah, just so impressive.
One of the questions when I interview people and I've asked them about the fight, I always ask, does Terence Crawford need to stop him to make a statement? Obviously, Sean's fought the best of the best, and no one's ever managed to stop him when he's been defeated. And then Terence certainly did that. Where do you think Terence goes from here? Because I know his contract with Top Rank's up. I'm guessing it's PBC.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think when you look at the top of that division, and really and truly with someone of Terence Crawford's caliber, you can only look at the top of the division, the top 4 or 5 names. You've got Spencer and Ugas, who are both with PBC and both the other champions. So you've got to go that route, really. It'll be interesting because I think both of them kind of have some stuff to deal with. The WBA actually refused them to actually fighting each other because Ugas has a mandatory to deal with. Spence has a mandatory coming up as well that he'll have to look at. So I said in my video that, and I've not seen many people sort of suggesting this, Keith Thurman is being thrown around as like a comeback fight for Errol Spence. I actually think it would be a good idea for PBC to throw that name out there for Crawford, because there's been a lot of beef in the past and stuff, to kind of ease him into life at PBC, give him big payday, get him a big event against a decent name. I think Keith Thurman would actually be a kind of good route. We'd only see one winner there, but I do think it would be the right sort of move from PBC to get him under their ranks.
Yeah, it's a good point by Keith Thurman. He's been out of the ring. His last fight was Pacquiao, wasn't it? That was 2019, I think, and that was there a very long time ago. And do you know who Errol Spence's manager is?
So with the IBF, it is Abdu Kakarov, who's a good fighter. Again, not quite world level, but he's been mandatory for quite some time. The mandatory was supposed to be called last year. He's had a lot of fight pullouts. Obviously, Spence has been out of action as well and landed the Pacquiao fight. He was supposed to have the Ugas fight before the Pacquiao fight, so it's just been all up in the air. But you can't go too long without getting away with these mandatories. So surely it's kind of got to come into effect soon.
And especially the IBF as well, because the IBF they really do cut down and they'll make, if you're their number one, if you're their mandatory, then they'll definitely make sure you get that title shot as soon as possible. Just like a couple of fights I do want to touch on. Gervonta Davis has got a fight coming up against Isaac Cruz in December. How do you see that fight playing out?
I only see a Tank Davis win. But Cruz, listen, it's not. I think the main criticism is it's being billed as pay-per-view in America. So I think that's people's main issue with it. With the fight itself, Isaac Cruz, he's called the Pitbull, and he's called the Pitbull for a reason. He's sort of rugged, he goes after you, he's all action, and that's quite fun. And I do think, although some people probably don't see the matchup as competitive, you will at least see something really devastating from Tank, in my opinion, because that's the only way it can go. You've got Cruz that's just going to try and rush in. Tank's got the better punching ability, the better technique, the better counters. So he'll find another one of his trademark shots. And I think we're going to get a really good knockout of the year contender in that fight.
I think it'll be a war as it lasts, because Isaac Cruz just comes forward, isn't he? So, I mean, yeah. I do really like watching Gervonta Davis, but how can we watch that fight from the UK? Do you know if Sky or BT or anyone else like that will put it on?
So there's no kind of official announcement at the minute. The problem is with Showtimes, we don't have a kind of dedicated broadcaster here in the UK. Obviously, BT picked up the Canelo versus Plant fight. That's probably just because it is Canelo and they probably wanted to hurt DAZN a little bit. But I'm not really sure what will happen with the Tank one. Tank's ended up on Channel 5 once or twice. The Leo Santa Cruz fight ended up on there. So maybe we see something weird. Mayweather seems to have some kind of connections over here that he tends to leverage. So who knows? But as long as it's not pay-per-view over here, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the American fights, like, for example, Terence Crawford's fight yesterday against Sean Porter, that was pay-per-view over in America. But over here, it wasn't pay-per-view, even though it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know that Tank versus Santa Cruz was Channel 5. I'd have probably watched it then if I had woken up for it then if I knew that. Just one more fight I want to get your thoughts on. You've got Tiffany Lopez versus George Kambosos next weekend. I feel that a lot of people they don't know much about George Kambosos because he fought Lee Selby more than a year ago. When everyone knows Teofimo Lopez, obviously of his win over coming over Loma. How do you see this fight going?
Yeah, so I've kind of obviously I do my prediction videos on my channel, so I've done a lot of sort of digging into George Kambosos. Obviously saw the Selby fight. I'd seen his Mickey Bay fight as well, so I know a fair bit about him. Again, it's a bit like the Tank Davis fight for me, where I only see one winner, and that's Teofimo Lopez. But I do think there are some potential banana skin factors here. Just that Tio has been out the ring for over a year now. I know Kambosos has as well, but Tio's a little bit more. He's a bit more explosive, a bit sharper, and sometimes you notice it more with those type of fighters when they've been inactive. He's also the other factors for me are that he's very tight at 135 now. He said that a year ago, and now it's been 3 occasions where he's had to try and make that weight and boil down. And he's talking about his future now not really being at lightweight. So that could be a factor there. And obviously, as well, apparently he suffered from the virus at some point as well. So we have seen some fighters, it's taken a little bit out of them when they've gone back into the ring. So there's banana skin potential there. I think Kambosos can make it competitive, but ultimately, Teofimo Lopez wins the fight.
Yeah, it's on the zone as well, so I can wake up in the morning and watch it, and it won't be ruined by any thumbnails or anything. That's a good point about the kind of the weight. I mean, most of the 135 is really 140. I mean, Devin Haney, as we know, he kind of struggles with making the weight. So does Ryan Garcia. I mean, Josh Taylor at 140 also struggles making 140, so he'll probably be going up soon. So hopefully, the fight I want to see is a Josh Taylor or Crawford or Teofimo Lopez as a Josh Taylor. Who do you think wins that one, Lopez or Josh?
So I'm more for Taylor versus Lopez than I am Taylor versus Crawford. Taylor versus Crawford is one that kind of like I just said, good fight, but I only see one winner, and that's Crawford. Whereas Taylor Lopez, I think, is a bit more competitive. I actually think Josh Taylor wins it and wins it more easily than will probably be made out beforehand. I think it will go in as a real 50-50, and there'll be a lot of people picking Lopez. But I think Taylor is huge at 140, is really versatile, and I think it's just so good. I do think he beats Lopez, as some might see that as controversial, but I think he actually wins it quite comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, what Josh is on a top rank and Lopez is on top rank, so yeah, like that fight could happen as well. I mean, the Crawford fight might not happen now because obviously Crawford's leaving top rank, but yeah, there's definitely exciting fights for the future. But right, thanks so much for your time. I do appreciate it. So, have you got anything coming up for your channel at all then in the near future?
Yeah, so the two things I'll kind of mention really, as I mentioned, the amateur boxing is something I love, and I covered the Olympics. I covered the various events this year in kind of smaller detail, but my plan is to ahead of Paris 2024 is to cover all the major events, so Commonwealths, European, Worlds, the qualifiers, and then the Olympics. And by the time it gets to the Olympics, I want people to be at my channel for the amateur boxing. So the next couple of years, I know it's a long way away, but it's going to be really about focusing on amateur boxing because I don't feel enough YouTube channels really do. So I'm going to be doing that. And then the other thing I'm sort of looking to do is start to get into a studio a little bit more, do a bit of a kind of Tris Dixon's life stories and sit down with various boxing people, whether they be authors, trainers, managers, anyone that's been involved in boxing and can tell a story. I want to start sitting down with those people and bring that sort of stuff to my channel as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Cutmen are always good people to have on. I think they're very underrated because they
Yeah.
see everything, because they're always there for loads. They're not never stuck like one fighter. They're always in a like Ian Gemma Johnson. He's always does it for Sky or matchroom fighters. And just one more thing on the channel. Any merchandise coming soon?
I'd love to. My kind of catchphrase when I start the videos is "and we're live," and I'd love to kind of get that going. I know you asked G-Man about the Rip Gene stuff as well. I'd love to do that sort of thing, but I think I'm just going to build the subscribers up a little bit, so I know by the time it comes around, maybe if some people are asking for it, then's the time to get going. But yeah, I think if anyone does want anything, they can reach out to me and I'll get it custom made sort of thing. But for now, I'll probably just keep it on a case by case.
What about going to Paris? If you're going to cover a lot of the amateur boxing, maybe you can try and get a media pass and cover the Olympics in Paris. What about that? 'Cause it's only across the channel.
Yeah, so that's the plan, to be honest. I don't just want to sort of sit here and do videos on it. I want to get to these events. The Commonwealths is in Birmingham, so nice and local. The Europeans, I believe, is in Poland, in Krakow, where I go quite regularly for work. So I'd love to go back there for that. The Worlds is going to be in Uzbekistan. So things like that. I'd love to it's also an opportunity for me to travel a little bit. I did want to go to the Worlds in Belgrade recently, but it was just too soon for me to kind of work things out with work and stuff. But that's the plan. I want to get to these events. I want to cover them kind of properly. I don't just want to be, doing the videos and watching them each day. I want to get to these events, cover them in person, interview a few people, kind of want to get down there with a camera set up and sort of report from these events and really give my thoughts. So yeah, you're right about that. By Paris 2024, I want to be seasoned in the kind of live events.
And so how many subscribers is your channel on? It's like 1.3?
Yeah, so it's just about to hit 1.4 probably by the end of this weekend. I should hope so. But yeah, the kind of at the start of the year, we weren't even on 100. I wasn't even on 100 yet. So since I've started taking it seriously, it's really gone up. And I owe that a lot of it to people like G-Man, Ade, etc., who have always kind of vouched for me. And coming on channels like your own as well always helps.
No, it's all you. It's all you because no one else is telling you to make the videos. They might encourage it, but it's actually thanks to you that the channel has happened because you're on setting it up. No one's asking you to do it. It's all down to you. You're on setting up the camera, writing a few notes what you want to talk about. Yeah, so I'll put your channel link in the description along with Instagram and Twitter. But we'll catch up soon then, mate. Thanks for the time.
Thanks very much, mate. Really enjoyed it.